Welcome to an overview of Celigo's Salesforce to NetSuite connector. On this slide, you will see on the left side CRM or Salesforce, and on the right side Accounting ERP or NetSuite. Notice that the standard integration flows, those for the standard connector, will be in blue, or the arrows will be in blue, and the premium integration flows will be in red. Let's get started. First, working within the Salesforce environment, independent of the connector, let's say I'm a sales rep or a Salesforce user, and I want to start with a new opportunity. Could lead to a quote, or I could be just working this opportunity, hoping that it gets to a point of closed won or being a done deal, and I would do that within the context of an account, new or existing. I might have some notes or attachments. I'm going to add some products, one or more products with price book information and currency. Here's now where we bring in our first integration flow, and this is the item to product. And we call this a supporting integration flow because this is something that should happen in the background. It's not directly part of the lead to cash process. You would create an item and maintain your item master in NetSuite and your catalog of items. And each item you create would sync over to a new product in Salesforce. By the way, all these flows are real-time unless otherwise noted. It could include price level in NetSuite corresponding to price book in Salesforce, as well as multi-currency if you're using that. The idea is to have that product available and ready for that quote or that opportunity, and for the connector to know exactly which item that corresponds to when it comes over to NetSuite as part of a sales order or quote. The next flow to bring in is the customer and account, and notice this one is bidirectional. So typically an account is created in Salesforce, and then when it's needed in NetSuite, it gets pushed over, a new customer is created. It's possible you might have new customers in NetSuite as well that you want pushed over to Salesforce. These are configuration decisions, and you can determine that when you set up your connector. But the point here is that this is a bidirectional flow, and it can be controlled at a field level in terms of which fields move in which directions. Similarly, there is a contact sync, also bidirectional. From left to right there, from Salesforce to NetSuite, we can also do filtering where we filter out contacts by role, either set on the account as that account is being built and the contacts are being added, or on an opportunity by opportunity basis. Again, this is bidirectional. You can control whether this is at a create level, at an update level, and this can all be set as a configuration setting within the connector. Now we're getting into the heart of the lead to cash process, and I run from opportunity to sales order. You see the sales order box that appeared there. That goes left to right in that I'm ready on the Salesforce side to go ahead and push that opportunity over to a new sales order in NetSuite. And then the beauty of the connector, though, is I want to get some feedback. I want to find out what's happening in Salesforce what's happening in NetSuite without having to log into NetSuite, without having to take up a NetSuite login or have that expertise and knowledge of navigating through NetSuite. So we bring that information back automatically, and we populate that into the Salesforce native order record. So this is a copy, if you will. This is a mirror image to the extent you want it, with any fields you want to bring over, including status, including a PDF of the actual order, so that sales rep, that Salesforce user gets full visibility that sales order has been created and can take a look at all the details, including the line level of each of the items added. And that is, again, real time and will be updated as it changes. So if the status changes, you'll see that in Salesforce as well. Now let's move more into the NetSuite side, and on the bottom right, I've just brought up a few additional records. You see invoice, cash sale, payment. So the sales order is going to lead most likely to some other records being created, some other activity happening. You're going to want to bill that customer and have an invoice. You'll most likely be accepting payment from that customer. And again, in Salesforce, you may want to have some visibility to that. So, and even later down the line, there might be a credit memo or cash refund. We bring all that back to a custom financials record. The orange indicates a custom record that we install automatically with the connector. And we sync that back to Salesforce with full visibility as related list on the account, and in some cases on the opportunity, such as in the case of an invoice. One more financial related is there at the top if you see that financial totals. And this is a case of an additional batch flow. This is one of the few non-real-time flows, and I'll explain that in a second as to why that's designed that way. But this is an additional sync from customer to account where we bring over specific financial fields from NetSuite into Salesforce. If you take a look at your customer record in NetSuite, you'll see particular financial fields like days overdue, if it is overdue, of course, total amount billed, all that sort of thing. And this can be brought over or is brought over once a day from the customer to the account, or you can bring it up on demand through a button directly in Salesforce on that account page. So we do that, make that a batch flow to reduce the number of API calls and not threaten your limits, and because this sort of activity would generate a lot of calls over to Salesforce. So that is one of the few batch flows. Another batch flow we have, really the only two, are at the bottom there, exchange rates, and also similarly NetSuite once a day has exchange rates we bring over. They do, if you subscribe to that service, you can populate Salesforce with the exact same exchange rates through this flow, and this keeps all your reporting consistent if you are using multi-currency. That is the end of the standard flows. We're going to go now into the premium ones if you have the premium version of the connector. The first thing is more of a feature than an integration flow, and you see there in the middle, it is a custom record, but not from Celigo, but from DocuSign or EchoSign, now I think called Adobe Sign. We support bringing those documents over at certain stages of signature completion. You can add those to the opportunity and sync those over to the sales order on sync. I didn't mention notes and attachments also will come over as part of the standard connector and premium connector along with your quote or your opportunity. The next feature is channel sales. We also support if you have cases where you have a different account in Salesforce that you want to ship to versus bill to. So you create a new opportunity in Salesforce with account A, but maybe you want to be shipping to account B. We support channel sales such that if you select that partner account on that opportunity, we'll automatically swap those on the NetSuite side such that that order is created under the billing entity, which might be your partner, and it's shipped to the original account. We also support the concept of team selling, and so Salesforce and NetSuite both have a sales team split on that opportunity, on that sales order. They chose percentage split of who gets credit for the order based on sales rep. We also support a quote-to-quote sync. Although this shows as bidirectional, this is initiated from the Salesforce side. We create a quote, and there are two kind of use models we've seen where this is useful. If you create a quote in Salesforce, if it's a standalone quote and you just want to use that, you don't necessarily have any reason to sync it over to NetSuite. But if you want to take advantage of the shipping or tax engine in NetSuite, you sync it to NetSuite, and then we automatically sync it back to Salesforce and update the Salesforce quote. So now you have shipping and tax that you can present to your customer on that quote. The other use case I've seen is where sometimes there's a need for reviewing the quote on the financial side, and so this is just a way to make sure that it's reflected in NetSuite, whatever is being quoted in Salesforce. The next flow is from order to order, and now we're getting a little bit outside of the best practices and what people typically do on the lead to cash process. So instead of using an opportunity, they would use an order and sync that over to NetSuite as a sales order. The next one here is, if you can see that there is a sales order reverse sync back to the opportunity. This is essentially adding the bidirectional capability of that opportunity to sales order. And this has a couple of use cases I've seen. One is that there may be a standalone order in NetSuite, an originating sales order that has no opportunity, and some customers have a requirement that every single sales order should have a corresponding opportunity for reporting purposes in Salesforce and for visibility. So that's one case. Another case is that typically, more of the common case for updating an opportunity to a sales order through maybe some iteration before that sales order is approved is always from left to right. It's I'm going to go ahead and make that change in the opportunity and resync it back to the sales order for an update. Some customers say, no, I want to actually make my changes on the sales order and push them back the other direction. So that's another use case of that bidirectional opportunity to sales order flow. And now down at the bottom, we'll get outside a little bit of the variations on lead to cash and talk about contract renewals. If you have NetSuite contract renewals, you are required to have the premium connector. Now, in terms of NetSuite's basic contract renewals behavior, if you have a contract renewals module and you have a sales order with a renewable item, you will automatically generate a contract in NetSuite, and that's shown there at the kind of the bottom right where you see contract. That gets generated automatically by a script in NetSuite, and we automatically sync real time over to a Salesforce contract. We are using the native Salesforce contract, but we have extended it to include items so we can reflect on that Salesforce contract all the items on the contract coming from NetSuite. So that's there for visibility. It can be used for upsell, which I'll talk about in a second. But the other flow we support with our contract renewals feature of Premium is to automatically generate a new opportunity when there is a renewal. So again, on the right there where it says contract renewal, that's NetSuite functionality that some number of days as you designate before the renewal is set to, or the contract is set to renew, NetSuite automatically generates an opportunity, a quote, or a sales order. We don't care which one of those it is. We'll put that in the settings, and we'll trigger a real-time sync to automatically generate a new opportunity. Then that opportunity can be worked from that point forward for year 2, year 3, year 4, whatever the renewal is. It can be added to, it can be subtracted to, it can be changed. That's fine. It's going to result in a new contract, but the cycle starts again. It does have a reference to the original contract or the previous year's contract on that opportunity. Now I said I was going to talk about upsell. So let's back up a little bit. We're in the middle of a contract period and the sales rep finds out the customer wants to add something to the contract. So what he or she would do would be to go to that contract in Salesforce. So here's the benefit of having it there, or one of the benefits, and find the related list that says new opportunity. He or she would create a new opportunity. It would have a reference to that original contract. He'd go ahead and add that one item, let's say it is, maybe it's one or more products, and go ahead and sync that over to a new sales order in NetSuite. And by reference of that existing contract, NetSuite automatically updates the existing contract and co-terms it so that the renewal, including now that new one or more items, will all renew at the same time. Okay, let's move on beyond contract renewals. Another feature of Premium is fulfillment to asset, where we're talking about serialized inventory. So if you use serialized inventory in NetSuite, we will sync over those individual serialized items with serial numbers over to individual assets associated with an account in Salesforce. We also have extended, you see there in orange, a fulfillment record in Salesforce so that we sync a NetSuite fulfillment to Salesforce fulfillment as well. And that's associated with the asset if there is an asset. Now moving up to the top, we also support opportunity to opportunity. This is again doing a variation on the lead to cash where you might want to go opportunity to opportunity and then work your sales order on the NetSuite side. Again, this is not a common practice, but is supported with a Premium connector. We also have opportunity to project. This comes about sometimes if you want to get that initial project created before you're ready to create the sales order, perhaps for budgeting purposes or planning purposes on the NetSuite side. And so we support opportunity to project as well. And then finally, even though we recommend item to product from right to left for keeping your item master and your product catalogs in sync, we also support as part of the Premium connector a product to item sync if instead you wish to originate your products on the Salesforce side and push those over to NetSuite items. And that concludes our overview of Celigo's Salesforce to NetSuite connector.